GM, everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining, and thanks everyone for participating in the hackathon. We're super excited to see what everyone builds. So yeah, that's kind of why we're holding this session today, is to make sure everyone can put their best foot forward when it comes to the project submission. I'm sure people have some questions, so a lot of this is probably just going to be Q&A. But I'll start off by, we'll do some quick intros, and then I'll walk through the submission form kind of like from our perspective, to help you guys just understand like what we want to see in the submission. And maybe that'll jostle some questions loose as well that we can cover at the end. So yeah, cool. So just to start off, I'm Nate. We've also got Matty and Clay here. We are the co-founders of Colosseum, and we are also judges in the hackathon. Obviously, collectively between the three of us, we see every single project that gets submitted. There's obviously a lot of other eyeballs. We have the judging group and some other help as well through the judging process, but the three of us see everything, and that's primarily because we don't want to miss anything, and we want to see every single project that comes through. And so yeah, again, like that's why we wanted to host this session and help you guys to understand what we're looking for, and really just help you put your best foot forward when it comes to the submission. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and actually just walk through what you guys see on the dashboard, and the project submission form, and just high level what we're looking for there. And then we'll dig more into the pitches specifically, like, because sort of the big two rocks are the pitch video, and then there's a technical demo video, which is new. So we'll talk through that as well. And then, yeah, we can open up for questions after. So let me go ahead and pull this up. Can everyone see that?
Yep, looks good here.
You guys on the call see it? Okay, great. Cool. So this is actually skipping ahead a little. You guys won't see this yet. The next phase is like the project submission phase, which starts next week. But this should look pretty familiar. You've got your project page. If you're on the dashboard, you've got your project. This is obviously just a test project. I'm filling in OR, which was a project that got submitted a couple hackathons ago. Maybe you guys are familiar. So I'm going to go ahead and edit. So this form that you guys have been seeing that you use to create your project, this is the submission form as well. The only difference when you submit it is like these fields start to become required, right? So you maybe haven't filled these in yet, but they are required. So just a couple notes on this. We ask for a name, that's obvious. A short description. Short is pretty important here. I think this will probably be a theme throughout, but just keep in mind that all of these judges looking through these projects see potentially over 1,000 projects each. We do somewhat divide it up, but it's still probably going to be hundreds of projects per judge. So you do want to communicate everything that you need to communicate in as short of a description or a pitch as possible. So just think, really take the time to think like, what is the thing that I need to get across, and just condense that down into as short of a description as you can, obviously without leaving anything out. Okay, so here I'm doing OR. So I've got OR is a proof of work token you can mine on Solana. It takes inspiration from Bitcoin, improving upon it with programmability, low fees, and latency to transact, and a more fair hashing algorithm. Boom. Okay, this is like a very, very concise version, right, of like what the project is. But that's all you really need. There is a field at the end, which is like additional info. So if you have additional links and things like that and longer form writing, like put it there, don't put it up here. Then you got prize tracks. You can choose up to 3 now. So no need to stress if you feel like you cover multiple different tracks. Yeah, you can just submit to all 3 on the back end. Like we will take that in and try and understand like where it best fits, and where you're also most likely to like win a prize is typically where we sort of slot them in. But yeah, you can cover a lot of bases with that. Okay, so I'm going to select DeFi DPIN consumer apps. Okay, where's your team primarily based? That's required. Link to the code repo. That's pretty self-explanatory. I guess the only important stuff to note here is, well, actually a couple of things. One is if you have multiple repos, please submit the most important one with the most stuff in it, because that's most likely what's going to get looked at, or at least looked at first. And then second is, we actually do check here that this is telling me the repo is public, which is great. That makes it really easy for everyone to review. If your repo is not public, that's okay. I mean, we understand that you might not want to do that, but you will need to share it with a special handle, which I believe is, actually, if I delete this, will it come up? Yes. Oh, no. Anyway, it's hackathon@colosseum.org. That is the GitHub handle, and you'll need to share it at least with that account, so that we like the judges and the technical reviewers can take a look through the project. And there's like a whole flow here that will walk you through how to do that. And feel free to reach out. We'll share contact info at the end, but definitely reach out if you're having issues with this. This all relies on GitHub's APIs, so it can be a little flaky, but usually it's pretty good. Okay, we got team in here. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You guys probably saw this already. Okay, now we're into the meat of it. This is really the most important page. So yeah, we do require some kind of logo or graphic, just to sort of identify you. That's also what shows up in the project directory later. And then the pitch video. So this is, again, the goal here is to get across everything in as clear and as concise of a way as possible. I promise you it's possible to pitch whatever you're building in less than 3 minutes. In fact, it's probably possible in 1 minute. Y Combinator, right, does like 1 minute, or famously does like 1 or 2 minute demo pitches for pretty complex projects. It is possible. I will walk through briefly the just nuts and bolts of what needs to go in there, and then I'll hand it over to Matty and Clay to also talk through like what they want to see, or maybe like from what we've seen in the past, what works really well. But from my perspective, we really want to know about your team background. That's really important. Why you started building this thing, and kind of like within that is like what problem are you solving, and then if you have it, any feedback or validation, traction, you could call it, from users. If you don't have it, that's totally fine, but definitely talk about who your users are, like what you're targeting with this product, and then the big vision for the product long term. So this plays into like one of the main pillars of Colosseum, which is like we are looking for not just projects, but like startups that will stay around in the Solana ecosystem, grow the ecosystem long term, will help you, like will potentially will invest in you, will help you grow and scale, and be around in the ecosystem for a long time. So it is important to sort of like map out like where you're going, like what's the big idea, what's the big vision that you're working towards. Even if you're working on a public good or something, that's like, I would say that's still really important. Okay, so we'll probably come back to that, but just on to the next thing. This is new, technical demo video. This is really the last piece of the submission. The reason we're adding this is sometimes GitHub's not enough. Also, GitHub isn't always a good way for you guys to get across like the way you're thinking about building this. So I would say that this really is focused on like, given that we have the code, just kind of tell us like how you approached this and why you prioritize certain things, and sort of like give us just a peek behind the curtain of the technical side and all the work that you guys did in these past 5 weeks. So this does not need to be an in-depth demo of every single feature and every page on the app. This is more like how the product was made, and like, yeah, it is helpful to see it obviously and how it fits together, but yeah, this is more like on the sort of technical evaluation side of things. So that's it for the required fields. Then we come to the last two. Twitter account's highly recommended. It's optional if you don't want to do that, but particularly if you're a consumer app or you're user facing really in any way, this is really helpful. And so definitely recommend spinning one up and starting to kind of tell the world about what you're building when that feels right to you. And then again, this is kind of like the grab bag. I would say personally, I do read this section, but try not to over rely on it. Because again, there's just so many projects and so many details. Like probably you should just know that like the stuff you include in here is going to be looked at long after the pitch and like the description. So try not to rely too heavily on this stuff, but it is like, it's there for you to use if you have additional supporting docs and supporting links and stuff. So feel free to use that. And that's it. I think that covers the form. The one last thing I'll say that is actually really important, we will also look at your profile on the platform. So make sure to fill that out. This is obviously a sort of demo account, fake account, but fill this out. Like it's important for us to know who you guys are, especially if you are building a startup and you're looking for investment, or you're looking to join the accelerator. That's like one of the number one things that we want to know is like, what's your background? Who are you? Why are you doing this? Or maybe like you have experience in this area already. Definitely feel like there's sections. I don't know if you guys have all seen this, but there's sections in here for your sort of social links. If you have a LinkedIn and you want to share that and that has your job history, like great. That's actually all helpful context. If you want to share your Twitter account, I would highly recommend that as well. Just helps us kind of get a better picture of who you are. And so, make sure your team members also fill that out. This is all going to be helpful context for us and the judges as well. Cool. What did I miss? Matty or Clay, do you guys want to just jump into the pitch, sort of like from your perspective, what you want to see?
Yeah, we can jump into it.
Yeah. Do you want to stop sharing your screen?
Okay. It's going on. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, so I think you highlighted a couple of important things there, Nate, and I think we have a good like set of placeholder bullet points, which all are extremely true in terms of what we look at. I would say that the most important overarching theme is the conciseness of the pitch. I think there's a saying, brevity is the soul of wit. I think that's extremely true when sharing a product narrative and what you've built. And then maybe one other big picture point that I would make as it relates to how you frame your submission is, we think about products in terms of the scientific method, which is what is the hypothesis of this product? And if it's proven true, why will it matter in the world if it's proven true? And so I would take that into consideration and pair it with the brevity point, which is, there's a lot that can be built in crypto. There's a lot that can be appended to a pitch to make it sound like it is, a grand vision as well. But really focusing it on what is the product hypothesis that you have, and what is the experiment that you're running against the product hypothesis in order to try to see if that's proven true. And hopefully over the 6 weeks that you've been building or possibly longer, that will come into play. And so you don't necessarily need to pitch it as crypto's solution for AI, defense tech, and everything else under the sun. Really focus it on the one or two sets of variables that are associated with the product and the experiment that you're running with it, and that should be enough for us to go on. And then just to echo Nate's point as well too, you know, kind of going along with the scientific analogy, why are you the right scientist to be running this experiment and testing this product hypothesis? I think that those two things, if they come through, that is, in my opinion, 80% of what matters in terms of the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Nate and Clay have said. From my side, I think there's a few things I wanted to touch on. First is just make sure that you spend, like, obviously this is a hackathon, and you know, we want to check your GitHub and your technical demo, but make sure that you give yourself enough time to really like refine your pitch. Don't wait till the last minute to kind of like film yourself going through your slide deck. I think you really want to make sure that that's really high quality in terms of the messaging that you're communicating and the clarity of what you're building, because that's the first thing that we've seen that judges look at first. Even they'll look at the name of the project, even before they even look at who you are. They'll jump straight to the 3-minute video, and so we've just seen that time and time again that to get to kind of later rounds of evaluation, you really have to kind of nail that pitch about why people should care about this product in the first place. And then obviously people will dig in further. So that's one thing. In terms of a compelling pitch from my standpoint, I think some of the best pitches that I've seen in a sense have taught me something, whether it's about, you know, a surprising fact about some sort of market opportunity that you kind of uncovered. I think that's a really interesting way of approaching it. Like, you want to teach the judges something that they didn't already know about a particular market and like what you've researched and found to be true. And that if you can just build this product, there's demand on the other side. I think so. That kind of leads to the last point that I wanted to touch on, which is like one of the reasons why we encourage people to create Twitter accounts is to get some feedback from a potential user, or maybe even 10 users of your product, and to kind of maybe start the validation process of whether that you should even build this in the first place. A lot of the best teams are in constant communication with basically some potential users that if they were to build the product and get to the end of the hackathon and ship an MVP, that they'd have some users that want that product on the other side. So I think explaining also in your pitch at some point that like, hey, you have sort of validated this, like that you do maybe have even a little traction, or not that you've like launched the product and it's on mainnet, but that you've been in contact with some prime users in like a Telegram group that you know want to use the product if you can ship it to market. So yeah, I think those are sort of the high level things I wanted to touch on. And then I guess the last thing is like in terms of focusing on the pitch, you don't need to spend too much time on making it look pretty. I think that's another thing. I think people misunderstand me when I say take some time to focus on the pitch. Like, I think, you know, it can be a very plain white and, you know, white background, black text. Doesn't need to be fancy. I think it's more just thinking through the order of the deck and what you're communicating. And I think we've given you some indicators about what we want to see in terms of like team background, why you built it, why you think it's important, the big vision. So just make sure to hit on everything that we request in that list. And I'm sure people will love it.
Yeah, 100%. I think on that last piece, like, I would personally much rather see just like either just you talking to the camera very clearly, or white background, black text, like nothing super fancy. Then see like the super fancy overdone thing without much actual content to it. Obviously, if you have both, that's great too, but just way more important is like the content and the communication of what you're trying to get through, rather than like the polish on top of it, especially for such a short video.
Yeah. Maybe one last thing that I forgot to say as well too, just in terms of bookending the pitch, like, we understand that, you know, in this 6-week sprint that you can only accomplish so much. While we hope that, you build the final form of the product in 6 weeks, that'd be great. That's probably not going to be the case. And so I think having at least a 10 seconds on like, hey, here are the few other experiments that we want to run, assuming that are going to continue with this, because I think that helps with sort of forecasting what the future iterations of this will look like beyond sort of the bounds of the product that's submitted in the hackathon, and gives us a sense too of how and if you are going to continue working on the product itself. So that's another key piece that I think is always helpful to see, especially for such a compressed amount of time to build.
Yep. Okay, we have a couple questions coming through, but if you have a question, just drop it in the chat. Is there a clear bullet list of questions / slides? Yes. So in that project form that I was showing, which you guys will all see, there is a list. It is not as specific as like slide by slide, but it covers all the things that you need to include. So it's kind of up to you how, what slides you put in there, but yeah, that's the list. Okay, the people being Ryan, would love to hear what Matty and Clay have to say about the technical demo video.
Yeah, I can probably go first on this. So as Nate said, this video is new. We haven't required this before. But what we want, at least what I would like to see, is sort of a walkthrough. I mean, it's obviously different based on what type of product you're building. But let's say it's like some sort of like user-facing application. I would want to see sort of a walkthrough of like how the app works and sort of what features that you decided to build for the hackathon, in addition to sort of the technologies that you built and why, and particularly why you did what you built. I think this is like a really important part of the hackathon in terms of evaluating for winners is like why did you prioritize certain features over others? Like I think that's really important just for startups generally. Like every week you got to ask yourself, okay, like what are we building towards? Like what features do we need to build in order to see if we have product market fit with this startup overall? And so you have to come up with some sort of ranking in your mind about, okay, like we're prioritizing this feature, we're going to build it for the hackathon. This will help us get some validation on the product or even product market fit itself if we can build it. So I think we want to hear sort of your prioritization framework as you sort of walk through how the application works technically. So I think that's particularly would be interesting from my standpoint.
Yeah, the thing that I would add is a very brief, maybe bullet point of the tech stack and how that flows into the design choices. I think one of the components that we always try to understand as we're reviewing these things is what are the off-chain and on-chain components, and when you are doing things on-chain, being explicit about what it is and why. Obviously, that can come through in, if it's a user-facing product, you see that you're connecting Phantom and doing some transaction or whatever. But where it's not blatantly obvious, I think calling that out, because for us understanding sort of the different ways in which Solana is being used in its most expressive form to build products and features that matter, I think that's always an important component of the technical side. I would avoid, I think that people often are very opinionated as it relates to, different technical components that they're using and why. I would avoid trying to make that point or justify it. If you're a fan of a particular thing, you don't necessarily need to get into the nuance of that. I think really keep it focused on the tech stack and what it's enabling in the context of the product is probably the most important thing.
Cool. Okay, yeah, we got a few more questions. Should we invite judges to TG groups that we make for our testers? I wouldn't recommend it unless you know them already. I think these judges they're all pretty busy. A lot of them are founders. So yeah, probably would not. I would not recommend that unless you have.
I don't know. Yeah, I was gonna say I kind of disagree in some ways. Like if you can go out and like convince someone that you have no connection with, that has, a refined view on how to build products on Solana and can convince them to, become a user, I think that that's actually pretty cool. And if you manage to do that, prior to pitch submission, like we want to hear about that. But I agree with Nate, like don't spam
Yeah,
people.
don't blind them is what I
Yeah,
meant.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
If you
yeah.
talk to them and they're like, "Yeah, I'm interested," yes, 100% do that. That's a great sign. Don't just blind them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I would say like that's a great push of go find users and never discount the power of a DM on Twitter that can always lead to some people are always on the other end of it, and so if you can go find users whether they're judges or not, I think that's great.
yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, can I not use my face for technical video? Just gameplay footage and under the hood. Yeah, that's fine if that's how you want to do it. That's really up to you. Meg asks, curious how many women are building in the UK hackathon. That's a great question. We don't actually ask for gender on registration, so I'm not sure off the top of my head. The UK super team folks probably know, though. And there's always a decent number. What else?
There's a question around can I not use my face for technical did we cover that one?
Yeah,
Yeah, we covered that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Protocol first with future consumer layers. How do we frame fundability if revenue may be downstream? I mean, I think being able to forecast to how does this become, a business in the context of a crypto native product or sort of traditional, B2B SaaS consumer fee product, like that's always helpful. But I do think that, we care about the abstract of what is the protocol doing and why and how is it differentiated, and obviously have a bullet point or two as to how that can become sustainable long term, whether it's via revenue generation, whether it's via some token mechanic. We love to hear sort of how you think about it, even if it isn't um, uh, you know something that you're necessarily committed to one way or the other.
Yeah. And then Bjorn asked, should we include budgeting in the pitch? No, I don't think so, unless that's like somehow really crucial to what it is you're building. Like you have a really high startup cost or something, and you need a lot of sort of upfront funding for that. That probably doesn't make the cut for me for what's going to go in that 2 to 3 minute video. What's the deadline for submitting a final version of the video? That is May 16th at midnight PST, I believe. Yes, May 16th, midnight PDT, which is basically Pacific time.
Let's see. Someone's asking if they can mock up like the ultimate vision of their application or game. Would that be a good idea? I'd say, yeah. I mean, this is the one thing. So for like games are super visual versus like other products. Like it really matters like the gameplay, right, of whether like something is successful and fun. And so I think like definitely sharing what the ultimate vision is for the game is going to be critical. It's not required though to kind of like mock up a video of what it could look like long term. In fact, like it could be helpful if you have extra time and you want to add that to the additional section. I'm sure we'll take a look, but I think it's more like people know that like this is a hackathon and there's only so much you could have gotten done in that amount of time. But definitely leaving time at part of your pitch video that you explain kind of like what the long-term vision is and like what you're trying to accomplish with the game is critical. But I wouldn't say it's a requirement to create a video, kind of video showing like what it's going to look like. Although it could be cool depending on how much time you have.
Yeah, I would also add too for gaming in particular, the gameplay is always nice to see and is interesting, but the kind of getting back to the technical demo question, understanding the on-chain components and why those specific components are going to be a part of the game is actually as equally important as the gameplay. Like you want it to be a fun game, but if you're building in, a crypto hackathon and building a game in crypto, I think you need to have a very clear vision as to what are the mechanics and why. I know it's a sub point to the demo, but that to me is the most important. And it's like often the first question I ask after seeing like a really glitzy gameplay montage.
Do you recommend having the pitch deck running in the background for the pitch video? Yes. Like I think the best teams, you create a pitch video and then you use something like Loom or some sort of recording where we can kind of hear you walk through the slides and kind of give an overall pitch of the slide deck through video format. So yes, definitely recommend that. How important are the weekly video updates? Yeah, this is another new one. So we're not actually sure how important these are quite yet because it's the first time we're actually having that as an option. I would imagine that a lot of the better teams who are very engaged in the hackathon would be submitting those weekly updates, and it's definitely going to be something we're going to look at in like the later stages when choosing between various teams at the end, where we can kind of get as much information and detail as possible about how people are thinking about like problems that they ran into and how they solve them throughout the hackathon or prioritize certain features over other things, and kind of gives us a view into kind of like how you guys are building as a team for your hackathon project. So I think I'll at least be looking at them, but probably not until like the very end when we're kind of choosing between teams.
Yeah, judges will see those, so it's just another opportunity to get across your vision and kind of like how you were able to find your way to that. But if you missed some of them, that's okay. Don't stress. Like this is we know like submitting 5 is hard, especially given that it's new. And I think we missed the reminder emails on the first week, so I think a lot of people didn't see that until week 2. So yeah, it's okay if you miss some. Okay, we got one from Sean. When pitching a project with a multi-layered vision, like blending AI agents, decentralized identity, creative culture, how do we communicate complexity without overwhelming judges? Yeah, so this is a great question. I think like for me, it comes back to like starting out by thinking really deeply about like why you're building this thing. Like you kind of need to give people a conceptual framework to hang all of these various elements on. So it's like why are you building something with AI agents, decentralized identity, and creative culture? Is it to like solve a particular problem for some market? Is it you're building some tool for yourself for your own workflow? Is it like why does this thing need to exist? And then that hopefully can be described very succinctly, and then you can kind of bring the other pieces in as it makes sense, right? To say, I had to solve this problem, and the best way to solve that was decentralized identity, or it was AI agents. I needed to use them for this particular thing in the product, and that's why it makes sense. And so, sort of like logically stepping through like why it is that this, why it fits together this way, would be my recommendation. And just like trying to avoid buzzwords too. I think we mentioned that. That's just always adds in like extra fluff. Okay, we got another one. Do you think having a well thought through FinRev and growth projections is good to have? That's like revenue and growth projections. Yeah, go ahead, Clay.
Yeah, I would say like at this stage, you're 6 weeks in. I think it often leads to an exercise in false precision, and so I think that maybe having a stronger grasp concisely around what the market is probably the most important component, rather relative to showing a graph that's up and to the right, because we any of us can tell a story that shows that, and so I don't think it's particularly differentiating for a pitch relative to talking about the market and your unique approach to it, and then we can do the back of the envelope math in our heads around what makes the most sense in terms of how this could grow.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add there is like a lot of the best projects are sort of creating new markets that you can't even project out what the revenue or the growth potential or the TAM of that market's going to be, and so I think yeah, a lot. I mean, it's like Clay said, it's probably too early for that, but we definitely do want you to indicate that this is like a business or there could be revenue, and you don't need to model out what that revenue is going to be.
Yeah. Bandolero, you can have it live on mainnet. In fact, if you have it live on mainnet before you submit, that's actually great. We love to see that. No need to wait. Just do what you need to do in the course of building. If you're ready to launch it, launch it. I think that could be a really good signal. We got another one from Bjorn. Backgrounds of the team. So you have 8 people on the team. Yeah, so this depends on, I mean, first of all, I would say like, please have them create profiles on the platform and just add those profiles to your team, like in the submission form. And then that way we can branch out and have them fill out the profile with the relevant information about their backgrounds. And then we actually will pull that all together. So that I would recommend that. But in terms of the team section on the submission form, like not where you add the team, but like talking about the team background, again, just be brief, like talk about maybe like what it is that kind of brought you guys together and why you guys are the best team to build the thing that you're building. You don't have to go in depth on every detail of people's backgrounds.
Yeah, I would just add briefly too as well, like we don't need the full sort of CV of individuals that you choose to share, but I think the most powerful thing is like how previous experiences are being parlayed into this particular product. Like I built XYZ thing at XYZ company, and in that process I saw XYZ thing, or I was testing on the weekend and saw, like, even if it's not a job that you had, it could have been like a project that you're running or a user experience that you had where it sort of radicalized you into coming to this internet hackathon to come build something and express it to the world. So, much less interested in sort of like if you're going to do the blue check marks of your life, and more about the specific things that led to you showing up here and building this product.
Next one is like, when will participants know if they've been selected to join the 8-week Colosseum? I'm assuming you're talking about the Accelerator. Yeah, it'll take us roughly about a month, at least historically. That's sort of the time frame of which it takes to go through all the submissions, choose winners, and then from that pool of winners choose, interview teams and come to a decision on which ones will be accepted.
Did we lose him, or is that just my internet?
Yeah, I think he cut for like 2 seconds.
All right, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back. Mine.
Oh, sorry.
But you're back.
Yeah, there was another question around, is it okay to keep building after the submission? Yes, in fact, like, do we change the repo? Yeah, so I mean, generally, like, we definitely want you to keep building after the submission, and hopefully you can kind of demarcate that in your repo, or you can use a new repo if you want. But I would say, like, definitely,
if it's GitHub, we'll be able to see.
Yeah, we should be able to see regardless.
Don't worry.
But yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. In fact, like, when we interview teams several weeks after the hackathon, and we're trying to get more information from some of the more top teams that we've identified, like, that's one of the things we'll ask is like, okay, well, what have you done since the end of the hackathon? We want to see people keep developing, keep building, because the hackathon is just kind of the starting point. It's not the end of your journey.
Yeah.
Is it okay to build solo? Is that the next one?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Is it okay to build solo with outside advisors? Yeah, I mean, definitely plenty of previous hackathon winners have been solo, although we find more and more a lot of the winning teams are coming 2s and 3s. That's just pretty standard also just with startups generally. We highly encourage people to find a co-founder or find an early team to build with. Just because one, you can just get more done, but also two, it helps sort of diversify the sort of the skill set and like what you can accomplish, and also just like emotionally, right? Because startups are hard, and you want to be able to lean on people throughout that journey when maybe things aren't going your way, or if things are going really well, then you need some grounding. So I think like for the hackathon, completely fine to find to build alone, but we highly encourage you to find other builders to build out your project with long term.
Yep. And then Bloody B asked about public goods projects in particular. So honestly, a lot of this stuff applies to public goods projects as well. It shouldn't be that different. The main thing just is like, yeah, you don't need to talk about revenue and sort of like, I'm going to turn it into this type of business if you're truly looking to build a public good. Everything else still matters. Like we definitely want to know the team background. We want to know kind of in depth what it is you're building and why you're building it. I think for public goods, it's even maybe more important of like what problem you're solving or like why do you think the community would want to use this public good, right? And especially if it's already out there, often public goods are open source, right? So are people using it? Who's kind of picked it up? Do you have sort of a community of contributors or something like that? But yeah, I think everything else is more or less the same. Any other questions? I think we got to everything. Oh. All right. We can probably end it early. Any parting words, guys? Parting tips?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll go.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Wait, well, there's one other question here I'll answer first, and then I'll kind of thoughts. So what the question is, what should we say in the team slide if we're solo founders? Yeah, again, I think the most important thing, as sort of Clay mentioned, is basically like the team slide is supposed to project why you have good like founder product fit, basically. Like why are you building in that particular vertical? Like has it been some experience that you've had with your current job, or have you done just a tremendous amount of research in that particular vertical that's led you to some sort of insight? And so if you're a solo founder and you're just wondering what to put on the team slide, we want to know kind of like why you're building, like this particular vertical. Do you have experience with it? And if so, like what sort of expertise do you have that make you kind of uniquely able to build out the product? So hopefully that helps. And then, yeah, my final thoughts for you guys is that like this is like a pretty probably the most competitive hackathon in the world, and so we just get thousands of submissions, and we try to judge everyone fairly and include as many different voices as possible and get as many eyeballs on every project. But at the end of the day, like it is a little bit subjective because you're kind of projecting out what a hackathon project can do over the long term, and so there's some variability there. And I just wouldn't obviously like we're really excited to give prizes to the best teams as we've kind of chosen through this process, but it's been in the past where we've missed teams, and I just don't want anyone to take this as like the final word on whether you have a good product idea or not. Sometimes it's not a good product idea, but sometimes maybe you just haven't communicated it well, or we've missed it, or the judges haven't picked up on it, and you want to keep building and just keep despite the maybe not winning. And a lot of the best teams have come out and done so. So just don't take our word as final, I guess, as part of this process.
Yeah.
I feel we genuinely time everyone takes to come and build.
Clay, your mic is pretty
choppy.
I
think you're chopping out.
You go ahead, Nate.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, I was just going to second that. Like, if you feel really strongly about what you're building, keep building it. The hackathon shouldn't be. We hope that it serves as like a really solid sprint for your team, but this shouldn't be the end all be all. Like, definitely keep building, keep pushing forward. So, and yeah, especially since, like Matty said, it takes us a month to get through the judging and interviews anyway. Ryan asks if there's anything that can get you disqualified, like anything you guys consider cheating. I mean, not really, but I mean, so one thing is like uh, we don't award prizes to projects that like come from large, well-staffed organizations or teams that have raised venture funding and are like already kind of established. That just doesn't feel fair, and it's not in the obviously not in the mandate of kind of what Colosseum is doing here. So that's the main one off the top of my head.
Also, there's actually some. If you want to look exactly about what would disqualify, we have some rules at the bottom of the landing page that you can take a look at. There's a PDF, and there's also like the Colosseum code of conduct. So if you're like in the forums making lewd or racial comments or something.
Yes. Wait, did we lose Matt now?
Or just causing a ruckus on the platform, that will also get you sort of disqualified. But we haven't luckily seen much of that at all. So yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Do we want to go? I guess we still have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Do we want to go? There's a bunch of.
Yeah.
Should we answer some of these?
For sure. Yeah, actually, one thing I wanted to mention just real quick is the FAQs on Colosseum.org/hackathon. So Colosseum.org is our website. If you go to the hackathon page, there's an FAQ at the bottom. We do cover some of this kind of like nuts and bolts of what might be disqualified. One thing I forgot to talk about is the GitHub repo. And this plays in a little bit to what you're asking is like, we do like, so we're not looking for code quality or like, that your code is perfect and there's test coverage and everything. Like I don't really care about that, especially for this hackathon, but we do want to see that like your team is capable of doing the work. So if it's obvious that you guys just like paid a bunch of other people to do the work, and passed it off as your own, that's really bad. So do the work yourself, please. Please implement some Solana integration. That's kind of the whole point of this. And just that you actually put your head down and did some work during the hackathon period instead of it being done before or all of it being done after. Where else? What are we missing here? Cultural like cypherpunk themes. You want to take that one?
Again, like the pitch should be as clear as possible. So if it adds clarity to kind of understanding what the totality of your project is, go for it. But if it's just going to confuse kind of the judges, and if there's too much sort of context that you can't put in a 3-minute video about it, maybe leave it out. But I think the main thing you just want to cover, like what is the burning problem or burning opportunity in your mind, and like what is your product doing to solve that or capture that opportunity. And if that involves cypherpunk themes or community archetypes, go for it. Can we develop a project in the same repo past phase 2, or should we fork? And correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, we can just have them keep developing in the same repo.
Yeah.
We'll see. Everything is time stamped, right? So we'll be able to see it. Can you please summarize the 3 main areas used to judge? Is the same standard used for different categories? Should we be more focused on marketing or just a pub or product for this short period? I think at a high level, it's important to know that it's mostly about the product and what you built during the hackathon, but it is a startup competition, right? So that there is a non-technical sort of marketing business aspect to this for sure. And so you want to make sure that part of informing what you're building is making sure that there's some sort of validation or market demand for what you're doing. And so you should spend some time talking to potential users, getting feedback from them, making just it clear that you are building this. We recommend everyone, create a Twitter account and start, telling the world and trying to form a community of potential users that you can share, feedback on product development with. So I think it's both. And we look in terms of judging, we look at both of those components. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yep. Bandolero up and to the right to answer your question. I think that's it, right? Did we miss anything?
The last thing is if we have code from before the hackathon started, who should we contact to inform? Yeah, you can just email us hello@colosseum.org. But it's fine to have code obviously before the hackathon started. We allow a few months prior of work done, but just keep in mind that you'll just be sort of judged on the work done from the start of the hackathon to the end of the hackathon. But it's not a problem if you have code prior to the hackathon.
Yeah, it's actually not a. If you think you're in like a really unique scenario, let us know. But otherwise, you don't need formal approval typically. So I would say just submit it. We'll reach out if we have questions.
Sure. So Traffy asks, so will all the judges be judging all projects or will they be category wise? So it's sometimes up to the judges, but I would say most choose a category or a certain subset of projects to look through. They don't look through all of them, although some venture funds and other ecosystem developer teams do actually look through all projects. So, Colosseum itself looks through all projects, but not all judges. It's too many projects for most judges to look through all of them. So they usually go by category or a subset of teams. Can you talk about the judging process? So yeah, I can touch on that a bit at a high level. So the products are due at the end of the day on May 16th. We'll get basically a dump of all those product submissions, and we'll basically then start trying to filter for spam. So we get some projects that are not obviously integrated with Solana, or they're unrelated to the hackathon, or they're just not they're not part of they break the rules in some way. So we'll do some spam filtering, and then from there we'll split up those projects amongst the Colosseum team and a few external developer teams to actually just go one by one, and we try to get at least two people part of that first pass through to look at every single project at least twice. And then there's a process of basically getting it down to the point where we hand it off to all the judges, where they can look through either, like I said, a specific category of teams, or they can look through all of them if they want. But we do publish a public directory about a week after or 2 weeks after, where you can kind of see, once the filtering has gone through, all the submissions in one place. And then each judge kind of has their own things that they look for. So I can't really speak exactly, but most are looking for a lot of the things that we've been talking about here. And then that usually takes a couple weeks to get through the judges actually looking through all the projects that they've been assigned. From there, we get basically an aggregation of feedback, and then we Colosseum are going through the projects through our own process. Usually with this lens of okay, which are the sort of the startups that we would want to be backing. From there, there's then a period of interviews, I would say, where we're sort of reaching out to teams who have sort of made it past those first couple rounds to understand, and usually that's a few hundred teams that we're asking for more details. So I think last time it was 120 projects that we interviewed, something like that, where we just needed to dig in more on what they were building. And get more information. And then from there, that's kind of where we have to make some decisions on who to stack rank within each category. So there's usually a set, I don't know, like 20 or 30 teams per track that are kind of like shortlisted. And we got to kind of go through that interview process and also get more direct feedback from judges on how we should stack rank those 30 projects within like a top 5 winning track. Yeah, that's how we kind of get to the end of it. And then from there, once we have sort of I think there's usually 40-ish winners if you add up all the tracks. We will then basically choose from that group of winners the 10 to 15 teams that Colosseum will invest in and accept into the Accelerator program. So that's another kind of like segment at the end. So hopefully that kind of gives you an overview of how it goes. And that usually takes about a month. But we're not quite sure how many projects we're going to receive, so it could take longer.
Yep. Was that a question, Rohit? I think the text is backwards for some reason, but it says any tips for DeFi projects. So, I mean, yeah, I guess just everything we've said applies. DeFi is no different. In DeFi, like a lot of things have been tried already and sort of failed in certain ways or maybe succeeded in certain ways. You know, I would say try and show that you're like a student of that sector and understand why what you're building is unique, or if it's not something really new, why your iteration of it is better than what's already out there. I would say that really applies for DeFi in particular.
They also Vandalero asked about the Accelerator program. So yeah, I mean, this is also sort of the hackathon is sort of evolving, but also the Accelerator program is also evolving based on like feedback that we're receiving from the first 2 batches. But the basic structure is that yeah, we choose 10 to 15 teams from the winning pool of teams from the hackathon, and we basically first we invest upfront in each 250,000. It's basically a sort of a standard pre-seed check, same deal for every team. And we basically get them onboarded to a new section, basically the same platform that you're using to participate in the hackathon. There's also a kind of a private section for Accelerator teams that we help onboard them to that have a variety of different resources. So the first thing that people are sort of utilizing are a bunch of like basically perks and deals from ecosystem partners. So if you need help with like RPC credits or audits or AWS credits, like there's all sorts of teams, and like legal help, like there's all sorts of offers from ecosystem partners basically that we have to help kind of one just take you from a hackathon project to like a kind of a startup, and that also can include like entity setup with some of the legal firms that we work with. Because oftentimes, like you need an entity to actually intake the pre-seed funding that we offer. So there's like just a setup period, I would say, where we're kind of onboarding teams. We're also just introducing them to people in the ecosystem. So that can be folks at the Solana Foundation. It can be people that can help push their project forward. So if you're a DeFi project, like a stable coin or something like that, and you want a lot of integrations with a lot of DeFi protocols, like we'll help you get sort of integrated with like connected with the teams that can help you with integration within the DeFi ecosystem. And it's one-on-one also just with us. Like we spend a fair amount of time with each team, just trying to understand like what they're trying to build long term. I would say one thing that also happens is like a lot of teams, this is also something we didn't touch on, but is important to know. Like we, from a Colosseum investment standpoint, are much more interested in the founder ability and the general market of what you're building, rather than like the specific product that you got to a proof of concept during the hackathon. Because what happens is oftentimes you have to pivot. Like these startups are so early that a lot of the people in our accelerator, are somewhat in a pivot mode. Like they're trying to find product market fit. They're asking for feedback from users. They're getting varying different viewpoints on what they should build next, and they're kind of iterating on the next step of the startup. And so there's a lot of pivoting involved, and we're kind of trying to help kind of validate or give them at least advice on where to go next. And so I think that's a part of the program too, just trying to figure out what you should build long term within the vertical that you're building. And so that's part of it. And then at the very end, there's obviously the demo day. So this is like where you've kind of gotten maybe a better sense of like what you're building. You've kind of committed to your startup. You have some funding, but you want to maybe push it to the next level, which involves another infusion of capital, or you want to start the process of getting in touch with venture, other venture funds that can help you with your seed round, and or angels. And so we host a demo day for basically the folks in our program at the end. But yeah, I don't know, did I miss anything, Clay, Nate, on what the program is about?
No, I think in summary, it's just end-to-end support from the end of the hackathon into building the most efficient on-ramp and best trajectory, creating machine for your company. And I think that the network of mentors is really, really important in affecting that as well too, because they can become some of your first users or some of your first customers depending on the type of product that you're building. And so that's another important point of emphasis.
Yep, agreed. We had one more question from Bangers. Did I hear something about submitting update videos after the submission? So we don't do that for the hackathon. Actually, even for Eternal, the updates are all along the way. That's mostly just because like we can't ask the judges to look through just an ongoing flow of update videos, but feel free to post them on social media if you're developing your product and have this kind of build in public thing going, or you have new features to announce. Like, definitely post them. We might see them, but yeah, we probably won't be able to include those in the submission for judges.
Cool. I think we're over time anyway. So yeah, thanks everyone for showing up and asking really good questions. And good luck with your products. We'll look forward to reviewing them at the end of the hackathon.
Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Best of luck, guys. Take care.